Hello everybody, good evening. I'm Cosmic Claire and welcome to another one of my evening video blogs. I'm very sorry I've been away for a couple of days. Well, I haven't been away, but I've just been off the screen for a couple of days because I had some serious PC upgrades and stuff to do around that. And as these things often are, there were a few glitches along the way which took a few phone calls to people who might be able to help me, and anyway, all but one of the lesser problems has been finally sorted out, and most of what I need to have working is working, so I'm very grateful to have got that sorted out, but I'm sorry that I wasn't able to give my time to doing any videos the last couple of days. But anyway, in the meantime, yeah, in the meantime, while I've been away, I've been thinking about the kind of things I talk about all the time. And one of the things that has been on my mind for a little while to talk about on this video blog is the concept of asymmetric war. Now, this concept kind of arose as a result of things like, suppose, terrorism and so forth, where you have what is an asymmetric situation, a bit large military powers such as the United States or the old Soviet Union are fighting against either random terrorists who strike out of the blue, or else kind of guerrilla warfare, old Afghan war back in the 80s, so forth. And I think the concept really is worth extending, if it hasn't already been done, to the situation we're in now, except it's asymmetric to the point where the term war is kind of only half applicable. And what I mean by this is that there are two kind of separating ways of thought, or just ways of acting in the world, that are going in two opposite directions at the moment, like a watershed. And I often think it's quite instructive to think about something like a high peak on the top of the Pennines, and when rain comes down, most of it lands on one side or the other, but some of it lands right on the top, and it's kind of interesting to think about the tiny little variations whereby one molecule that's next to another molecule of water will ultimately go down one side and the other one will go down the other side, just because there's slight variation. And well, maybe we're in a situation like that now, because the two sides of the mountain are kind of getting further away, if that's not too mixed a metaphor. What I'm thinking about here is how the new paradigm and the old paradigm kind of go together. The total asymmetricness of it, asymmetry, is that the old paradigm wants to stop, control, kill off any thoughts of a new paradigm. And the people in the new paradigm just want the people in the old paradigm to cease and desist and to start cooperating rather than trying to compete and dominate. And this asymmetry kind of goes through the ways that both sides work. I mean, one makes war, the other one tries to make peace. It's kind of hard to make peace when people are making war on you, but this is the big challenge, to try and find ways of peacefully dealing with the well, it's kind of like the tantrum of a spoilt child, and often I think all that child needs is to just kind of be held until it burns out its tantrum, and it realizes that you know, the person who's holding it doesn't mean it any harm, but at the same time just wants the child to cease and desist from being selfish and unruly. And I mean that in the sense of unself-ruling, not simply abiding by external rules. Yeah, so that's that's one level of the asymmetry. I mean, another one is in terms of greed and versus opposed to sharing. So it's every single kind of, they're all expressions of the same thing, which is that one side wants to control and dominate. And it's only a small, this is another aspect, of course, of the asymmetry, is of course that one side is very, very small, and the other side is very, very large. So one side is very, very small, but very concentrated, whereas the other side is very, very large and disparate, and, well, possibly dissipated. I hope not. So the challenge really is for enough people to build a peaceful consensus amongst themselves, so that this can make an asymmetric war against the dominating, I was going to say crowd, but the dominating clique, who are sucking the rest of us dry. And I think this is kind of one of the great, well, it's a kind of cloud with a silver lining, because obviously it's a drag that they are, you know, kind of trying to suck everybody dry and make everybody slaves, but at the same time, they're kind of meaning that the system that they are trying to suck dry is kind of bound eventually to stop working. I mean, I've said this before, but if these elites had continued just being happy with the percentage that they controlled back in the 70s, though the 80s. I mean, I remember, what was it? In the 1980s, I think there was a workshop theatre group called 784, which was said that related to the idea that 7% of the population owned 84% of the wealth. Comparing it to today's situation, that seems comparatively benign, whereas it's now kind of more like, you know, 2% own, you know, 98% of the, well, whatever it is, I don't know, I'm not quoting that, but it just seems to be getting ever and ever more concentrated and ever more unequal. But I think the important thing is to just keep on with the concentrating of consciousness, because that's another asymmetric aspect of it. They have no or very little consciousness. They certainly have no conscience, and the word conscience and consciousness, they all come from the same root. And that's the asymmetry of it. They don't want to know. They're completely locked in lower vibrational energies, and we have to turn those lower vibrational energies around, so that we don't get caught up with them ourselves, because this is the kind of central thing I think about the asymmetric war, is that they want to turn us. They want to turn us like yeah, that's right. Yeah, vampires. Yeah, in Buffy, the vampires always want to turn people, don't they? They want, oh yeah, I want to turn them into a vampire. And then you got like that guy who was the guy, the king vampire and all those. Because they want to turn everybody to their greed, to become part of their hierarchy, rather than having a human society which is level and even, where people may have different amounts of wealth, but they have equal human value, and that's really what counts. And if somebody has a little bit more money or wealth than somebody else, and they recognise the equality of value in other people, in poor people, then they are far more likely to use that advantage and that wealth to do something benign with it, which will help other people. Because this is really what needs to be done in terms of human activity. Needs to be done thinking in terms of both the greater whole as well as personal gain. There's nothing wrong with a little bit of personal gain, but it's the most important factor about that is whether it's a case of it's at somebody else's expense, or if it's a win-win situation. If you're taking it off somebody else, that's not good. But if everybody's winning, the energy's growing, then that's a completely different thing. And so it's okay. I think one of the problems that has been kind of infiltrated into the alternative approach is this idea that we have to get rid of all money and all wealth. One day, yeah, I'm sure we will get there, but it's I think it's a distraction, because if somebody has earned their money honestly and behaves wisely and does good things with it, then that is a positive force for good in the world. It is a positive force of nature, rather than the machinery of corporations, which is just simply geared to suck money away from people, win-lose situation. So we want to get away from that vertical, hierarchical, people at the top, people at the bottom, until we have one where people are equal, people are treated equally, there is a level playing field. And that, of course, is not symmetrical with that. It's not just a parallel system, it's a completely radical new way of looking at it. And basically we have to do this because it's about recognizing that it is people that it comes down to in the end. If the system is not serving people, if the system leads to people being poor and hungry and cold, then it's a system which isn't working. It's a system which is asymmetric, because the people at the top get everything and the people at the bottom get nothing. So I think we need to start thinking in terms of creating our own symmetry, a world where everybody is equal. And that starts with the way we look at ourselves and our friends and the world, and even those people who oppress us. Yeah, it's really, really important not to give in to them. It doesn't mean, letting yourself be a victim to them, but at the same time, it's about not letting that child have its tantrum and think that it owns the world and that it's better than everybody else, because it's not. It's just a childlike neurosis that these people think that because they've exploited more than anybody else, that they're better. And so we need to have compassion with them and do whatever we can in whatever small ways in our lives to turn the energy around, a bit like Kwai Chang Caine. Kwai Chang Caine from the old Kung Fu TV series, very great big fan of him. He was good at fighting an asymmetric war. He was good at turning the spears away and blocking the blows, and showing that he would not be dominated and he would not be cowed, but at the same time he was a man of peace and he didn't want to harm anybody. And the longer we stand in our peace, the longer we stand in our truth and peacefully in our truth, then, and think of people, examples like Kwai Chang Caine, then we have a chance of winning this asymmetric war and winning an asymmetric peace. In fact, creating maybe a symmetrical peace. Well, anyway, I'm getting all kind of tangled up in a few simple words there and everything, but this is where we need to go, folks. Symmetry, respect, looking from one person into another person's eyes and seeing that true symmetry of recognition of equality and human soul. So I will leave it there, and I hope I shan't have any more technical problems. So with any luck, I'll be back again tomorrow night. So remember that we are all symmetrical beings looking back at each other, which is what this means in Lakesh. Thank you. Good night. I wasn't able to give my time to doing any videos the last couple of days, but anyway, in the meantime, so yeah, in the meantime, while I've been away, I've been thinking about the kind of things I talk about all the time, and one of the things that has been on my mind for a little while to talk about on this video blog is the concept of asymmetrical on the way, which took a few phone calls to people who might be able to help me, and anyway, all but one of the lesser problems has been finally sorted out, and most of what I need to have working is working, so I'm very grateful to have got that sorted out. But I'm sorry that asymmetric war. Now this concept kind of arose as a result of things like, suppose, terrorism and so forth, where you have what is an asymmetric situation, a bit large military power such as the United States or the old Soviet Union fighting against either. Hello everybody, good evening, I'm Cosmic Claire, and welcome to another one of my evening video blogs. I'm very sorry I've been away for a couple of days. Well, I haven't been away, but I've just been off the screen for a couple of days. Because I had some serious PC upgrades and stuff to do around that. And as these things often are, there were a few glitches, random terrorists who strike out of the blue, or else kind of guerrilla warfare, old Afghan war back in the 80s, so forth. And I think the concept really is worth extending, if it hasn't already been done, to the situation we're in now.